online tomorrow, and we'll also put it on social media and in the e-news. Just a reminder, this is not a debate or a chance to mudsling. Please refrain from calling any other candidate out by name. If residents have any follow-up questions, they can reach out to the candidates directly, and I'm always here to answer questions as well. As stated in the e-news, each candidate will have 5 minutes to give an introductory speech and then 1 minute to answer each question. We are going to start with our 5-minute introductions. We're going to go in alphabetical order by last name for this. So Katie, you are up if you are ready.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thanks for putting this together. And I'm really looking forward to spending the next hour or two with the fellow candidates. I feel I can speak on behalf of all of us that we're all very passionate about our community and love being residents here in Ken-Caryl. So I feel very humble and also happy and excited to be in the company of everyone. So again, my name is Katie Bowling, and I am a resident in Winterbrook in Ken-Caryl Valley. My husband and I, with our 4-year-old son, moved here in 2010 from Chicago. The backstory there is that my husband had received we had always dreamed of a life in the mountains, and my husband received a job offer in Denver at Dish Network. We started working with a realtor that would help us with relocation. We looked all over the metro area, and something that he kind of pulled out from us while we were looking is our love of activity, nature, really feeling that we want to be living in Colorado and having a Colorado lifestyle while being in Denver. And he suggested that we look at Ken-Caryl, and despite it being a fairly large commute for my husband's initial job here, we fell in love with what we saw in the community and the backdrop of it, and we moved here in the summer of 2010. I was pregnant with our daughter, and she was born a couple months later. And I'll quickly share the scene upon us of the three of us arriving at our home the day we closed was one with the neighbors coming out of their homes, people coming down the street with little children and welcoming our son. We had a house in Chicago that didn't have that type of environment, so I can honestly say it was love at first sight with our home and our neighborhood. 2 months later, we welcomed our daughter into the world. Her name is Holland, and she's now 13. So our kids are 18 and 13. And I'll share that I still have this handmade sign that our neighbors across the street made for our daughter when she came home from the hospital. It says, "Welcome home." And every year we get it out for her birthday and the neighbors. And I remember, that special time. And I guess that is just an example of the love and the passion and the care that I feel for this community. I think it's a true home, and I'm sure we all feel that we can say that. And it's very special to live in a place that you really want to be part of what's happening around you and enjoy seeing your neighbors and loving driving home, and that sense of being and feeling at home and knowing that this is just such a special place. And that's truly how I feel. I'm just checking my time. From a professional standpoint, I bring a unique skill set to this. I have been involved with nonprofit management for about 15 years and currently oversee sales at an organization where community building skills is a very big part of my job. So very enthusiastic to bring that skill set to the table. You can find my whole profile online at the Ken-Caryl site, where you can read more about the candidates. And I think they're going to be published in the paper in a couple of days as well. One thing that I didn't share in that profile that I feel is important to mention in this kind of forum is this past summer. Last year, I started a job at a new nonprofit, was hired in February, and upon landing at that job and looking more through their spending and what the programs were versus how they articulated their mission, I was very uncomfortable. I didn't feel it aligned with being very transparent. So in July, I actually left that job just because of personal belief that it didn't feel like something I could get behind. I didn't like the lack of transparency and what the money was being, how the money was being used from a donor transparency point of view. So I'm also I feel very confident in my skill set that it would contribute well to Ken-Caryl beyond just my passion and love for the community. So I'll leave it at that. And again, really appreciate the opportunity to be here and look forward to the time with my fellow candidates. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Katie. All right, Randall Flint, you are up, sir.
Hey, can you hear me?
We sure can.
All right. Yeah, I just want to say thanks to kick it off. Say thanks to everyone watching, and especially to those who submitted questions. Obviously, if you did, you're invested in the neighborhood. You care about what happens. And I just want to say thanks for your time. So my name is Randall Flint. Yeah, I'm running for one of these MA board seats. So I've grown up in Colorado. I'm from Colorado Springs. Went to school, CU Boulder, graduated with an engineering degree up there. I did spend a year study abroad in Australia, but then moved down to Denver and got a job with Lockheed Martin. And I've been working with Lockheed Martin since 2002. In 2005, we moved over to the Deer Creek location back in Ken-Caryl Valley. So I drove by this beautiful neighborhood every day for years, just hoping and I could live there someday. And I have some family back there, and it was always kind of this unobtainable thing for me. But it eventually happened. I got married years later, and my wife and I were looking for a house in 2016, and I wasn't pushing her towards Ken-Caryl. She was new to Colorado. I kind of let her find it on her own, but she did, and she loved it. And we ended up getting back here. So we're over in Stallion Point. We back up to the stables, so we have some horses in our backyard. And we have two kids now. So we have a 6-year-old girl who goes to Bradford. We have a 2-year-old boy who goes to Goddard in the Ken-Caryl Business Park. Yeah, so we're a young family. I think we're representative of a lot of new residents in the neighborhood. We've been here for 8 years. We have neighbors that have been here for just a few months. But I think we're aligned. We share similar life goals right now. And I think we're looking for the same thing from the neighborhood. So we're invested. We're accountable. We want to be here a really long time. So everything we do now, we're going to be around to feel the effects of it, good or bad, for the next 30 years. And that's one of the big reasons why I'm running. Just really care about the neighborhood and how things are going here. From a qualification standpoint, so just to tell you a little bit about my time at Lockheed. So I started as a software developer, but quickly moved into technical leadership and architecture. And so now I've a multitude of jobs, but I do some organizational leadership. I have about 70 people that report to me. And then also on the technical side, I have a separate team of about 60 people as well. So I'm pretty well versed in organizational leadership, technical leadership, working with the customers, balancing complex requirements, and just making things happen. So usually I'm sought after for big, complex, new issues, new projects. People don't know what needs to happen, but they know we need to deliver. So that's usually where I come into the picture to figure out all the twists and turns and make things happen. So the real reason I'm running for the board here is, I don't think I knew the board existed when I moved into the neighborhood, but I started to pay attention over the years. And I guess it was kind of hard to tell what was going on sometimes. It seemed like there were things happening behind the scenes. It wasn't totally apparent as to what things were trying to be accomplished. So that's why I want to jump in. I'd like to bring some transparency to the process, some two-way communication. I'm big on those sorts of things. There's some really smart people in this neighborhood. with some really good ideas. The committees, the task forces. I just like to pull all these people together, work collaboratively, help those diverse perspectives flourish, and help the neighborhood move forward. Because if we all do it together, it's going to be a lot better than just a couple of us doing it. So I really believe in being a representative of the neighborhood, not bringing in my own agenda or my personal thoughts on things. I have an opinion, but it doesn't matter. I would like to be here to serve the residents and do what makes sense for the neighborhood. So yeah, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Randall. All right, Rilla, you are up. Rilla? Can you unmute? Rilla, you are still muted. Okay, let's move on to Carrie for the time being. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. And first of all, I want to thank all of you who are in attendance tonight, as well as those of you who have opted to watch this forum at a later date. I really appreciate your time, your attention, and your participation in this process, because I feel like it's really important for us all to participate in this. Obviously, I'm Carrie Scott, and I've lived in Ken-Caryl Valley for over 10 years with my husband, Glenn. Glenn and I've lived in or around Ken-Caryl and have been a part of this community for 24 years. Raising our 3 kids out here. I have 2 bonus sons who came into my life when they were 6 and 9. They're now 34 and 31. Both are married, and our youngest son and his beautiful wife just had our first grandbaby in September. Converse to that level of grown children, our daughter, who just turned 20, will be graduating from Baylor University in December of this year. And then we'll spend 8 months at home here in our community, before God willing, she starts law school. And then we have 3 very loved dogs. My husband refers to them as very spoiled dogs, but I like well-loved a little better. Professionally, I've been in healthcare, both in the profit and nonprofit organization space for over 16 years, and in management for more than 20. Currently, I'm an executive consultant fulfilling interim leadership and directive roles focused on improving hospital operation business support functions, including like revenue cycle, patient-facing roles on the business side for healthcare systems that are struggling with efficiency and effectiveness. Basically, I'm an operations girl with a lean black belt and an MBA who fixes problems and loves to roll up her sleeves to find solutions. I'm a candidate for a master association because I see a need to rebuild trust, provide transparency, and build a high-functioning board to assess, understand, and deliver on the expectations of the Ken-Caryl residents. I agree with Randall. There's some really smart people within our community. I don't think everything needs to be reinvented, but polished and a strategic plan put in place. And I'm ready to serve and roll up my sleeves to take on these challenges. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Rilla, we'll pop back to you if you are ready. Okay, let's move on to Philip then. Philip, you are up, sir.
Yeah, just in case you didn't see it, Brian, a message popped up on my screen from Rilla that said it's not letting me unmute. Did you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll fill in for the next 5 minutes and hopefully
Okay.
Rilla's able to relog in. It's nice to see that we have a great candidate field tonight, and there's going to be at least 1 new member of the board. I've been on the board for the last 3 years, and I moved to the US in 1985 and have lived in Ken-Caryl since 1993, which is 30 years. And God willing, I plan on living here another 30 years and being carried out in a box. I moved here to Ken-Caryl partly because of Bradford School. My daughter had just been born. And also because I appreciated how green and beautiful it was. I was a recipient of the Tree City USA Award. And as far as I was concerned, best kept oasis within the metro area, with attractive recreational amenities, open space in abundance, and community pride. I don't know if there's, I guess if you've been here for more than 10 years, you'll remember Pride Days. And my favorite place is the North Branch Pool. When I sit there, I can imagine I'm at some resort in Arizona. So when I first ran for the board in 2021, it was because Ken-Caryl was, in my opinion, looking uncared for, because maintenance had lagged, trees had not been replaced, and the prime focus of the boards for the previous 10 years had been to build 20 more miles of backcountry trails, while converting attractive gravel trails between the houses into concrete urban, what I thought was eyesores. I do not like concrete among trees. And I was elected 3 years ago, partially to reverse that trend, and my record shows that we've made good progress. But as the rest of the evening will show, I believe that there's more to accomplish, and not necessarily all of us tonight agree on continuing to fix one of the most important eyesores, which affect a visitor's first impression of Ken-Caryl, and that is fences. And to a certain extent, I'm curious to understand why people would oppose continuing funding the fences. Anyway, the community spirit of caring for the common good, which other candidates have mentioned, which was really a large part of being a resident in the 90s, I think has currently devolved into special interest factions of all or nothing, which is not good for the community. And even though resident surveys have consistently shown a desire for a balance between conservation and recreation, that balance, which I've attempted to uphold in the last 3 years, is once more under threat. So it's critical that your board, and this is addressed to the 54 people we currently have online at the moment, represents the entirety of Ken-Caryl and not just a very active minority, and recognizes that the board is charged with preserving the value for all residents, especially now that plans have been approved for commercial developers to build about 1,000 dwelling units to the east of 470. One of the biggest issues facing the board is going to be effectively blending in the needs of those new residents with our existing operations. So I would like us to consider accomplishing the following. In the last 3 years, I've demonstrated how I have achieved ensuring budget and fiscal integrity and compliance with the CCOIA. That's why we've recently appointed an experienced CFO to take care of the complex accounting issues and also act as a contracts manager, which I'll be addressing later. As treasurer of the board and also a licensed CPA in the outside world, and I also serve on the governing body of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in London, I've had to send back for revision many initial proposals received from outside contractors, which failed to meet what I consider minimum criteria to be considered for approval. We had one particular large contract bid, which was nothing more than one sheet of paper when it was presented to us. But after appointing a civil engineer, we got a real good set of specifications for the parking lot. And as a result of refusal to accept inadequate bids, cost savings to the association have been in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And on the income side, I've required all surplus cash to be invested in interest-bearing accounts, which is going to generate over $100,000 a year of free money for us as residents, which is equivalent to a reduction or saving of $2 a month on our monthly dues. I want to preserve and have attempted to preserve and protect our priceless signature landscape, and I want to promote a safe and enjoyable world-class experience for all users of all amenities, which includes trails, pools, tennis courts, equestrian center, and buildings. I helped the Fence Task Force obtain a 10-year commitment to replace all perimeter fences, and we've made significant repairs at the equestrian center. And I want to ensure the continuation of the stepped-up maintenance of those existing facilities. So in concluding my introduction, it's my belief that a well-kept community is the most visible way that we can demonstrate to the outside world that Ken-Caryl is the most desirable suburb of Denver, and as a result, our property prices should rise to reflect our exceptional quality of life. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Philip. Okay, Rilla, I think you are set and ready. We are ready when you are.
Okay, thank you, and I apologize for my technology is great until it doesn't want to cooperate with me. Anyway, thank you very much for your patience, everybody. And a good evening to everyone. Can you see me?
We cannot, but we can hear you, so we'll take it.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I don't know how to do that on my phone, so anyway, good evening, everyone. Let me introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. I'm Rilla Reinsma. I have been a resident of Ken-Caryl since 1992. I grew up in the South Denver metro area and went to school there. But after marrying, my husband and I lived near Bellevue and 470 to be convenient to his place of employment. After a number of years, we were transferred to California for a number of years due to a promotion with my husband's employer. When we returned to Colorado in 1992 with our two sons, we chose to purchase a home in Ken-Caryl. We had the choice of many other communities, but made the ultimate decision to stay with Ken-Caryl because we were familiar with the area. We had friends living here in the valley and loved the open spaces here. Since we've been here, we've been enjoying watching all the deer, the bobcats, foxes, the occasional bear, and last year a moose was behind our house. We enjoy hearing all the coyotes talking to each other, listening to the owls at night, and watching the raptors soaring looking for prey. We enjoy the clear blue skies, watching the beautiful sunsets over the mountains, and even the storms forming over the hogback. As a family, we have always enjoyed being outside recreating, whether that was participating in sports, bicycling, hiking, and camping in Colorado. We love exploring all that Ken-Caryl has to enjoy. Ken-Caryl is a wonderful community with great neighbors and neighborhoods. When visiting friends in other surrounding communities, we have decided there is no place like home in Ken-Caryl. So like many others, we are updating our home and here to stay. A little bit more of my background. I spent 9 years in the field of secretarial science prior to staying home and raising our two sons. They were involved in soccer, and so I did stats for their high school soccer team. And I also was involved with their competitive soccer teams, helping out with that. I also managed concession stands with a non-for-profit group, doing various venues around Denver Metro, including Dick's Sporting Goods Park, Fiddler's Green Amphitheater, Pepsi Center, Coors Field, and Red Rocks Amphitheater. What I did there was I was managing the concession stands and was responsible for product inventory, opening and closing paperwork, health, food safety documentation, and monies collected at the end of the night. After the sons left for college, I worked for retail for 7 years. And but since about 2016, I had more time to devote to our community. I've been attending meetings of the Open Space Committee, Master Association boards, and the Metropolitan District boards ever since. Having a quest for knowledge, I have accumulated thousands of pages of Ken-Caryl Ranch documents, along with many articles about the history of our area and the wildlife that resides in here. In 2017, I was appointed to the Community Planning Committee and am still a member. As part of the committee, I reviewed all the prior surveys to educate myself as to how the community feels and uses all the amenities of Ken-Caryl. Through those surveys, I tried to understand what the community desired. Last month, I was also appointed to the Open Space Committee. One of the things that I am committed to do is to continue to be a voice for the entire community, to preserve and improve Ken-Caryl's uniqueness. And like our motto was a number of years ago, I want Ken-Caryl Ranch to live up to its motto of being true Colorado living. And I hope to be able to do that. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Rilla. All right, we are going to move on to the question portion of tonight's forum. Again, each candidate will have 1 minute. There's your video. We'll have 1 minute to answer. April will give a 10-second warning to finish your last sentence. The rotation of who answers the questions is going to change for each question. So I will call everybody out when it is your turn. Katie will be starting to answer question number 1 first. And the first question is, the Master Association and the Metropolitan District work hand in hand to manage Ken-Caryl Ranch. What is your plan to build relationships between the two entities and their respective boards while being responsible in the allocation of Master Association dues? Katie? And you're on mute.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I would first say that when making the decision to run for a board seat, I think I've approached it with a spirit of learning and humility, and I'm trying to better understand the differences between the Master Association and the Metropolitan District. And I would say in this learnings and the conversations I've had, a small percentage of the community have a very clear understanding of the two branches and how they distinguish themselves. So I would say, if elected, I would want to approach everything with a sense of collaboration, a spirit of learning, humility, openness to ensuring that the communication between the two branches is something that we can reshare with the community to ensure that more people are learning about this. And then allocating funds appropriately in that collaborative decision making and spirit of collaboration.
Great. Perfect. Thank you, Katie. Randall, you are up.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so I think the best way to look at this is that we're a single community with 2 checkbooks, one being the MD, one being the MA. So the partnership here is incredibly critical, and board members on each side have a fiscal responsibility to the neighborhood to build that relationship. That can't just be casual. That has to be in-person outreach, personal connections, making that happen, understanding each other's priorities, finances, roadmaps, making sure there's no overlaps or gaps, eliminating duplication. And then if either board is working in secret, trying to do something different, that undermines the whole operation and everything that we're trying to go for. But if we work together, all our services and amenities are going to benefit. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. All right, Rilla, you are up again.
Okay, I think I got this now.
There you go.
Okay, one of the things that Ken-Caryl has is with both boards, they have a joint study session. And the joint study sessions have been on a bi-monthly schedule, but in 2023, I only count that they met 3 times. Now, I think that joint study sessions need to be regularly scheduled again to double check that each board is on the same page and has communicated the same to the residents. Budgets are funded annually, but in the joint study sessions, can the boards review them or consider reviewing them bi-monthly to make sure that funds are not being overspent and report the same to the residents? That way, if a course correction is needed, it can be handled immediately and have the residents informed of it. Each board has a role in the community. The MA is the owner of the majority of the property in Ken-Caryl, with the MD responsible for maintaining parts of it. Are the boards being transparent in how they are fulfilling their roles? The collection of monies should, through budgeting, prove that the boards are being fiscally responsible to the residents and protecting the value of the community. Thank
Time
you.
is up. Thank you, Rilla.
Perfect. All right, Carrie.
Right. Well, although the Master Association and the Budget District have autonomous responsibilities and maintain separate budgets, there is a synergy to them that can greatly benefit the community. And I think that's through identifying common principles or priorities, understanding the risks and opportunities for advancement in our community, and understanding the barriers and challenges that we face within one another. In my professional life, it's been and continues to be incumbent upon me to work collaboratively with a multitude of stakeholders, often with competing priorities, which I see these two entities struggling with. To move initiatives forward, I think we need to work together with the MD, make sure that we're having these monthly meetings, create a trusting and high functioning relationship that includes strategic planning, which I see as important, alignment of goals and projects, and look at various funding options where appropriate.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. All right, Philip, you are up.
Thanks. So while the MA and the MD have joint responsibility to manage the whole of Ken-Caryl, hopefully sharing the same objective of making it the most desirable place to live for miles around, the two entities do have slightly different boundaries and are funded separately. And so while the two bodies generally work together through those joint study sessions where topics of mutual interest are discussed, binding decisions on each board are only taken at individual board meetings. And so there is not a need for each board to agree with the other, but each should respect each other. And the best way, I believe, to work together is in an environment of trust, where each organization is fully apprised of proposed actions which impact the other's operations or property. Specifically, there should be no surprises between the two boards, where actions by one impact the other or are found out about after the fact. Also, the MD has attempted in the past and is discussing again the possibility of a tax increase. And I don't believe that it's the duty of the MA to either support or oppose that. I believe that voting on a tax increase is an individual homeowner decision.
Great. Thank you, Philip. All right, question number 2. What do you see as the Master Association's role in fire mitigation and preparedness? And this time, Randall, we'll have you start us off.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think the role here is the MA has got to take responsibility for mitigating the risks of fire in Ken-Caryl. Essentially, the MA has got to be the tip of the spear here, needs to act as such. That's going to include educating and encouraging residents to implement fire mitigation measures, and what they can do. You know, the creation of the Firewise Committee a while back was a great step there. But additionally, the MA can be on the lookout for creative ideas as well. Economically efficient ways to implement fire mitigation measures, combined with other initiatives. You know, maybe we can find some cost savings in there as well. But they got to be the tip of the spear, driving it forward and helping residents understand what they can do and how they can do it. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, Rilla, you are up.
Okay. Fires are not new to Colorado, as we well know. But I believe the role of the Master Association in fire mitigation is to maintain in good repair and condition all the lands that are owned by the corporation. I do not believe that this means the elimination of trees, shrubs, or grass, but to make sure all are properly trimmed where needed. Other than that, I believe the MA should encourage all the residents to be aware of their landscaping on their property and the location of plant life in relation to their homes. And the MA should make recommendations to residents through the architectural committee to look at items that are fire resistant. For an example, a number of years ago, wood shake shingles, which were predominant in Ken-Caryl, were eliminated as an approved roofing product because of their flammability. But first and foremost, the responsibility of the MA for fire mitigation is to take care of their owned properties. Thank you.
Great. All right, Carrie.
Thank you. Fire mitigation and preparedness is a growing concern. I mean, we've seen the increase even in our own community of intentional wildfires being set. I believe education plays a key role and should start at the homeowner level, both prevention and then preparedness in the case of evacuation. I actually learned a lot in a recent board meeting. There was a Firewise presentation, and just to educate a little bit, they actually do home assessments, but the extent to which this is already a focus and recommendations at both the homeowner level and board consideration was really a surprise to me, pleasant surprise. I'm reassured by our existing commitment to education and readiness, but from a board perspective, we should continue to assess the options proposed by our actual subject matter experts that are on staff We have these existing mitigation teams, and we need to work with them to balance community safety with the beauty that is Ken-Caryl.
Wonderful. All right, Philip.
So in 2021, at the time of the Marshall Fire, most of the state and all of Jefferson County was in extreme drought. And today, fortunately, only 5% of the state is in extreme drought, and Jefferson County is shown as being normal. The biggest cause of that dreadful Marshall Fire was dry grass and 115-mile-an-hour winds. And surprisingly, the aftermath showed that the houses themselves were a major source of fuel, which surprised the experts. In addition, the fires were transmitted along the roads through the neighborhoods by the accumulation of dry leaves and pine needles. Aerial images taken after the fact show that even where houses had been burned to the ground, many trees showed no trace of fire damage because trees by themselves are not a fire hazard just waiting to ignite. The Boulder County Commissioners now require new houses to be built with a 3-foot non-combustible buffer zone surrounding them. And taking this action on one's own property will offer far more protection than cutting down live trees miles away. And I'd also like to see the MA purchase a road sweeper to get rid of those pine needles along the roads, which Jefferson County fails to do.
Great. All right, Katie, your turn.
Thank you. I agree with the others that it's a passion point and something that the full community is becoming more aware of and also wants to participate in that conversation and be part of it. The prevention, education, preparedness is all very important. Something that I'm interested in doing is taking a little bit of a potential approach to how are we prepared if there is a real emergency within our community. I do see the backcountry and the trails being part of our fire mitigation plan, but I'm also interested in knowing, is the community interested in doing somewhat of a test evacuation of sorts? What is the plan and the communication between our administration, Firewise, and the Bradford campuses in the case that there was an emergency during a school day? Having that type of conversation so we're all aware of what happens if there is a real emergency is important to me as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, question number 3. What is your perspective regarding the current state of recreation and conservation in our open space? And what measures would you propose to achieve a compromise which balances differing perspectives so that overall community benefits? And Rilla, we will start with you. And you're muted.
Okay, let me get my video going back here.
And you're muted again.
Okay, we'll try now.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, I do believe that I do seek to have balance and compromise in Ken-Caryl's current state of recreation and conservation in the open space. In my opinion, the best way to achieve a conclusion is to look back at all the past community surveys. In each survey is a question that asks if residents are satisfied with the open space or not. Each survey gives an answer, and the board should implement the results as given, not reading anything into the result, but take the question as written and the result. Now, some questions have not always been black and white, thus resulting in answers that leave too much room for interpretation. The community has stated how many times it uses the open spaces and what they are satisfied with or not. The MA needs to implement those results. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rilla. Carrie.
As a community, we need to continue to strike a balance between recreational opportunities and conserving our beautiful open spaces. I know that there's an existing trail plan that was developed years ago. We should probably review that and either execute or redesign on it. I've gotten feedback on that's varied whether or not this was the plan to be executed or rather just a guideline of what could be achieved. I think this has established a level of dissatisfaction and resentment, worry and divisiveness over recreation versus conservation. But really if we could achieve both? Overall, I believe we should review plans that we've already financially invested in to create a plan that the board can deliver on before turnover occurs. Otherwise, we're just creating chaos and waste. But at the heart of this, we need to find out-of-the-box solutions to achieve harmony for both through some compromise and finding win-win opportunities to have recreation but keep Ken-Caryl beautiful.
Great, wonderful. Philip.
This is great timing, given that last month the board tried to begin open discussion about whether or what a conservation area would involve, but unfortunately there was a lot of opposition to even holding that meeting, so it went nowhere. At that meeting, a newly moved-in resident from Denver voiced his opinion that urbanization was inevitable, get over it. I don't believe that it is inevitable if we stand up for what makes Ken-Caryl unique. We have a fantastic opportunity today to designate maybe the hogback or maybe the southwesternmost part of our open space as a conservation area. And I fear that if we continue to develop our open space, which is owned by all of the residents in trust, the hillsides could ultimately become as unpleasant as the Thunder Valley Park up near I-70 and C-470. So before any more trails are proposed, I would suggest a single question be sent to all residents asking specifically, do you want such and such a trail to be built? And I would abide by those results. I wonder if all of the other candidates would do so too.
Great, wonderful. Katie, you are up.
Yeah, thank you. I actually feel that it's really a non-polarizing issue. I feel, sadly, I think that there's a few voices in the community that make it seem like that there's a lot of conflict and it's very polarized, but I do feel that most people love living here for the opportunity to recreate in this beautiful backdrop and environment that we have, and also feel that they're individually taking steps towards conservation. I know I have the community building skills here to bring a sense of unity and a new, fresh voice, if you will, in turning the page so that the issue it isn't as polarized as I feel it's that there's a sense for that, but that it's not actually really there.
Great, thank you. Randall.
Hey, yeah, so this is a divisive topic, obviously, that we're all passionate about, but it does start to affect the culture of the neighborhood, and it does distract us from working other issues that are just as important. I do think we need to lean on the open space committee and the other stakeholders in the neighborhood that provide the expertise here. But that process has to include leaders that demand open communication. They're able to facilitate those tough conversations, include all the key stakeholders, but also do it all with transparency. If you do go look at our website, you can scroll through pages and pages of documents that we've spent a lot of time and money on as a neighborhood. Wildlife studies, development plans, land use documents. I agree with Carrie. Let's not put these to waste. So my proposal, we update the applicable documents as needed, set an intentional and well-communicated management plan, and then move forward because we have to move forward.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Okay, question number 4. Ken-Caryl Ranch is a special place. How do you prioritize, support, and fund needed maintenance and improvement activities? And Carrie, we'll start with you.
Great, thank you. Ken-Caryl is an incredibly special place. It needs to be respected, protected, as well as evolve. The first thing to do, I think, is to define the needs versus the wants. The reality is that we all want our community offerings to expand as our population continues to increase, while not finding our neighborhoods in disrepair. We need to continue to rely heavily on community involvement and volunteer work where we can do so, and then either make hard, informed decisions together or have difficult discussions about how to further finance improvements or growth. As for a priority, maintenance should always come first so that we're not paying more for catastrophic intervention because we didn't maintain. We all know that as homeowners. And this is where collaboration with the Metro District can really come into play, as they can look into grants for funding while we look into donor programs. And if it comes down to it, start talking about bond funding, which again would be at the individual level.
Great, thank you so much. Philip.
So since my original election in 2021, we've begun fixing what were the two most prominent eyesores in Ken-Caryl at that time: collapsing fences and a ramshackle equestrian centre. Fence Task Force spent a year assessing the issues and solutions and concluded that a 10-year replacement plan with one standard fence paid for by everyone's dues would be the most cost-effective and efficient solution to that one. At the equestrian centre, we've renovated unsafe and unsightly buildings and arenas, and after spending $250,000 there, mostly from increased boarding fees, today we have a waiting list for horse boarding. I want to continue the momentum these improvements have created into the future, because every resident's valuation increases from a well-cared-for community. And the Fence Replacement Program was created by a specific $4 per month allocation of dues, and the funds were not approved to be spent on anything else, even though one Agnery attendee at the December board meeting suggested it should be, because in his opinion, fences have no value other than aesthetics. That's precisely why they do have value. The aesthetics increase the desirability of our neighborhoods.
Great, thank you, Philip. Katie.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think a couple of the other candidates have mentioned the community surveys throughout their answers, and I know there will be a new survey done in 2025. Given that I would be coming in mid-cycle of the surveys, again, I would approach it with a spirit of willingness to learn, listen, engage with community members, and really come in alongside people that have spent a lot of time these past few years going through the last survey and ensuring that we're on track. And then come the new survey in 2025, I'd really enjoy that process and helping put it together, process the information, and then ensuring that we put together a really strong community roadmap based on the collective feedback of the community to prioritize spending.
Wonderful, thank you. Randall, you are up.
Hey, yeah, so this one feels easy. I think it's, what do residents value the most, combined with what needs to be maintained, what do we need to invest in for the future, what is in need of repair. It's definitely a balance of needs versus desires, also balanced with fiscal responsibility. But there are some obvious things. If anyone was at the community center pool last summer, you saw that everyone had one bathroom. So it's a great place to start. Find the things that aren't working for the residents, that are really sore spots for them, and let's get those fixed right off the bat. Yeah, the community survey is a great place to start. There have been a lot of complaints, I agree with, that it's ambiguous, open to interpretation. So it's hard to know if you were really heard, if you were able to communicate what you really meant in those surveys. Something to work on. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Rilla.
Hi. Okay. All budgeting items should be listed in order of priority. Deferred maintenance needs to be the highest priority than regular maintenance items. If items are not kept in good repair, then it can cost more to replace them in the long run. We need to the MA can recommend new items, but they should be the lowest need. We need to determine also which items, or items plural, will protect the value of the community and keep the aesthetics of the community in top working order. Putting in additional projects into the community and not maintaining them will just devalue the entire community and be a waste of monies. Let's make a list of maintenance priorities and focusing on getting those items on track. With input from the community, the MA should look at new items with respect to their feasibility, cost to build, cost to maintain, and what gives the best value to the community. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rilla. Okay, moving right along. Question number 5. If you could allocate more funding to one or more areas of master association responsibility, what area or areas would it be and why? Philip, you are up.
Okay, so I'm happy with the current budget allocations. It would be easy for anyone to say raise the dues to do more, but we have a fiscal responsibility to the residents, and rather than always be trying to do more and more with the commensurate increased costs, I believe we should spread out our expenditures on capital projects as we have with the fence replacement program. Especially as in the next 3 years, with the population increasing significantly, we might find that priorities change out of necessity. So rather than having a wish list for more spending, my wish list is to spend less by not undertaking irrelevant projects. We should not be spending money on concreting existing gravel paths, for example, or marketing studies, or taking out turf grass, or taking down live trees that provide nesting sites for the birds. We've recently strengthened our finance department by hiring an experienced CFO whose objectives include minimizing costs, and together with him managing the cash investment program, this position should be self-funding.
Great. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. I believe I mentioned my nonprofit experience in my opening. And I think I'll go back to that. That is the nonprofit that I work for. We always strive to say that all answers are found in the field. And to me, this is the constituents, the homeowners, the residents of Ken-Caryl. So ensuring that anything that I would try to represent myself is in line with where I feel the community is. I will say candidly, in the process to decide to take up this candidacy and be part of this election, is that I did hear a lot of people ask me the question, where do you stand on recycling and trash? And so having that conversation around potentially ensuring that the community's voice is heard in the trash and recycling conversation, and potentially if the voice is there to bring back to make some changes, then the potential changes on the recycling side. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Randall.
Thanks. So I'm going to caveat my answer with let's assume this is money that falls out of the sky, because everyone works hard for their money. We all pay our dues every month, and I don't want to go spend your money on something of my choice, something that you didn't find valuable. But if it was me and somebody asked me, I would say amenities in the neighborhood, shade structures at parks and pools. I say that because this is where I see the community gather. This is where I see them have a good time, build memories, and build that sense of community up. But again, I would reach out to the residents and figure out what they want, what is of most value to them, and then prioritize those investments. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. Rilla.
Okay. We have a budget and it's been working, they've been working on it. But does this question mean that we have extra money to spend, or are we taking funds from one area and giving them to another? The example is the Equestrian Center. It's a historical site and one of the few, if not only, equestrian centers that is inside a community. In my opinion, the Equestrian Center has suffered from many years of deferred maintenance, and I would like to see funding go there to keep up its uniqueness in our community and its historical value. Fencing replacement has been another item that has finally been given a start, but I feel that we could do more funding to further it along in larger sections. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Carrie.
I really like Randall's concept of money falling from the sky and us getting to spend it the way that we want to on amenities. But in healthcare, I know the reality is you have to do more with less, and so I've got that type of experience to do more with less. And really, funding allocation boils down to the assessment of needs or resident pain points, to Randall's point earlier, and forecasting the impact of planned expansion. I think the board individuals should not be making allocating decisions or assumptions on behalf. We're here to represent the residents, and instead we should be executing on a strategic plan that's developed and then communicated to the residents for feedback in the spirit of collaboration. Everything about collaboration and transparency would be really important around the budget.
Great, wonderful. All right, question number 6. What can the Master Association do to build community, encourage collaboration, and address the needs of the community? And we will start with you, Katie.
Yeah, so first of all, I'll say that like I feel that you know, like it's a divisive time. Obviously this is that we're going into a presidential election and there's more divisiveness in front of us. I would like to see us celebrating our collective joy and love for this community, regardless of our individual opinions. I am a social media user. You can see me on Facebook. I'm an active user. I also have an Instagram account, but like a personal value of mine is always communicating with positivity and enthusiasm and trying to build bridges. So my hope is if I am elected as a voice within the board, sharing back to the community that I would commit to really using a spirit of positivity and collective joy for this community that we love so much.
Wonderful. Randall.
Hey, so I'm going to go back to something that our family has seen so much since we lived here, and it's just the brilliance and giving residents in this neighborhood. I think we need to lean on them more, give them opportunities to participate in moving our neighborhood forward. It should take a village to run this neighborhood between the boards, the employees, the committees, the task forces, other volunteers. We have the people here. We just really need to start using them. In terms of collaboration, I think people need to be in the loop on things. I think one thing that we missed on was the recycling change. I think that was a tough one for people to swallow. They didn't know about it. Maybe they were just too busy to know about it. I think we needed to over communicate the heck out of that to people to make sure they knew that that was coming. So that's an area, just increasing two-way communication and making sure that that gets out to people. Thanks.
Wonderful. All right, Rilla, you are up.
This has been a difficult thing to do because of the past history in the community. Too many residents have been discouraged for voicing their opinions or disregarding their professions, and so are not willing to participate in the process of making the community better. Board meetings should be respectful, no name calling, no slanderous language towards the board or attending residents. Until this happens, residents will be reluctant or outright refuse to be involved in any process. We need to encourage the community via e-news and the Life at Ken-Caryl newspaper well in advance that there are openings on a committee and ask for the residents with these skills to apply.
Great, thank you so much. Carrie, you're up.
The Master Association can lead by example. A good leader seeks to understand, and I think we need to recognize the diversity that exists in these neighborhoods. To love Ken-Caryl is to also acknowledge that we have about 4 generations. We have dual income families, we have retirees, we have business owners, and we have vastly different priorities day to day, while all sharing the commonality of a love for our community, whether it's recreation, it's conservation, whatever it is, we all love our community. I think it's time for us to create trust, transparency, more opportunities for participation and support in order to address all the needs of the community, rather than minimize Ken-Caryl to a 1 or 2 issue community.
Great. Philip.
Yeah, so as a board member, I've received some very unpleasant emails from a small number of residents who disagree with some of my decisions. And unfortunately, this is a pattern that the community has become negatively known for. I've actually asked a number of people personally to consider running it for this election. And the responses I received stated that they wouldn't run because they're not willing to undergo the constant bullying and misrepresentation on social media. One person told me that he'd recently resigned from a job in a toxic work environment, and from what he had seen of our board meetings, figured he would just be stepping into a situation which he thought he'd left. So to build community, I would like to create a much more strict conduct of meetings policy, because while we may be public figures who have run for office, we're all volunteers acting for the benefit of the entire community. The proper discharge of our duties can take 100 hours a month to read every relevant document provided, research the wider context of a decision, ensure compliance with laws, and evaluate the financial impact of a decision on the community. So given that we're spending that much time on behalf of the community, there's no reason for incivility.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. All right. Question number 7. How do you strike a reasonable, logical balance between the preferences of individual homeowners and the best interests of the community as a whole. We'll start with Randall.
I'm back. All right. Yeah. So the first part here, first thing we got to do is open up the lines of communication, so we can actually hear what homeowners want. We got to start there. Second, when we start to hear these things, not everybody's going to agree. That's okay. Even if we did agree, we're probably not going to have the money for all of it, so that's okay too. But that's normal. That's something that happens. I think everyone watching this has stakeholders that they're responsible to in their life, be it their family, be it their coworkers, their boss. And if you don't get your way, that's okay. That happens. But it's nice to know why. It's nice to know the data points. It's nice to have candid information as to why a decision was made. I think that's something that's been missing recently. And residents deserve to know the decision-making processes that we went through to make a decision. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. Rilla.
Ken-Caryl is a community, and the community is a group of individuals. And we have covenants that all the residents have agreed to. When they moved in here, they all got a nice big packet of the covenants. If this is not a covenant issue, then is there an alternative to propose? Will this have a positive or negative impact on the community? And while it is the job of the Master Association to use the collected monies to give residents the best value of their dollar, there might not always be a path to balance. And thus the interest of the community as a whole will have to take precedence over the individual. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Carrie, you are up.
I think this is achieved by looking at issues, recommendations, and decisions through a reasonable and logical lens. I believe in collaboration, and in this case, that means hearing from individual homeowners, asking questions, tapping our resident subject matter experts, and understanding upstream, downstream effects of the decisions that are made. I have experience in assessing the big picture and tend to focus on that rather than a myopic view. Additionally, I analyze, negotiate, and I'm able to compromise through win-win situations or collaborations. Again, back to Philip's point, not everyone will agree with every decision made by the board, but if I'm elected, they're going to know that my decisions were made using a common sense, logical, fair approach with respect for residents, and that I asked a ton of questions before moving forward.
Thank you, Carrie. Philip.
Yeah, I'm going to use a specific example to answer this question. When we moved here, we all bought into a community which was guided by the original development plan. And other than the undeveloped lots, the general tone of the document was that nothing material would change. And if there were proposals for change, they'd be subject to consultation. So when residents bought their properties, especially those who paid a premium to back onto open space and pay more in property taxes as a result, they should have had a reasonable expectation that their views and their privacy would remain. I don't believe it's okay for some community leaders to state, as was the case when, for example, the Stove Prairie Trail realignment was being discussed, that homeowners' lots who adjoin the new alignment or whose views would be affected should be given no more consideration than users of the trails. I think we really have to consider the effects that any decisions we make affect specific people. And so building communal facilities where previously there was none is, to my mind, akin to the takings clause. And I find it very worrying. I think we really do have to consider community effects on individual properties.
Great, thank you. Katie.
Yeah, thank you. I really believe in the phrase, I always believe that a small group of people can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that has. I feel that that's always been a guiding principle of mine and the community building that I've done over the years and my involvement in nonprofit management. I also know that I trust myself in the 15 years that I've worked in nonprofit space to best represent the donor for whatever mission or vision is part of that organization. And that's the promise that I would make to my fellow Ken-Caryl residents and homeowners, that we love this community. Let's make it the best place to live collectively. And my commitment is that I would put every bit of passion that I have in my own, in my professional life and for what I love into this community and role.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, question number 8. What is your philosophical view on landscaping in the Ken-Caryl community? And how would you propose reducing water usage, increasing wildfire safety, creating more functional common spaces, and improving aesthetics? Rilla, we'll start with you.
Okay, you got me?
Gotcha.
Okay. Landscaping is a large part of our aesthetics. Driving through any area, observing dead trees or large medians that are all weeds is nothing but a detriment to the value of the community. And that includes Ken-Caryl. We have areas that are not maintained for whatever reason, possibly giving potential buyers pause about purchasing in Ken-Caryl. If they purchase a home here, will its value go up? Especially if the landscaping in the community is not kept up. We have an architectural committee under the Master Association. Is that committee being consulted to create better common areas and improve the aesthetics? If not, why not? That's why we have this committee. So we need to also go back to that committee and get their expertise on some of this also. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you so much. Carrie.
I love the landscaping in Ken-Caryl communities. Each season brings a new beauty to the area, and I just love it. There are subtle but logical vegetation differences that complement the unique geography and wildlife of all of our areas, and it's truly beautiful. The Metro District is responsible for irrigation and runs very lean on their water usage. So I believe our water usage opportunity is at the homeowner level through education and landscaping plans when people make decisions to upgrade their landscaping and do different things. There's also a current wildlife safety plan in place, or wildfire, excuse me, plan in place that's being executed with conservation as a priority and to maintain some balance, achieve balance. I expect those subject matter experts will continue to deliver recommendations for consideration and for the board to continue executing. And as far as our open spaces, manufacturing and technology continue to improve. And I believe there are great options available in creating common spaces while keeping our aesthetics. I'd look at more natural looking, maintainable, sustainable products to build out those spaces for us to enjoy.
Great, thank you so much. Philip.
So Ken-Caryl Ranch was created with aesthetics in mind, with wide grass verges, trees between the roads and the sidewalks, grass and trees in the medians to create a softer environment, which leads to reduced speeds and reduced stress. Acres of shrubbery at many of the road junctions, such as at Continental Divide and Ken-Caryl Avenue, to advertise that we're not just a typical urban community. The greenery has significant environmental benefits. The turf grass is not non-functional, as some urban politicians would suggest. Its function is both aesthetic and as a heat reducer. There's many studies out there which show that having trees along roads reduces temperatures compared with rock or concrete by 10 to 20 degrees. Yet there are proposals here in Ken-Caryl to eliminate much of this shade and grass without stating any objective criteria. I will oppose us becoming like Phoenix. Likewise, I will also oppose any concreting of gravel trails such as Plum Thicket, which not only would become a slip and fall risk when its east-facing steep slope becomes iced over, but would cost over $100,000.
Thank you so much. Katie.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of listening and learning that we can do amongst ourselves, the boards, the committees, the architectural committee. And then something that, you know, I personally have learned in the past year that there are bills being introduced on the HO in Colorado, that there's some guidelines, if you will, or principles around what the state wants to ask the HOAs to do, so that we'll have to obviously be in correspondence there. But also just being like kind of smart, common sense approach. These issues of fire mitigation, curb appeal, greeneries, if you will, beautification of the neighborhood. There's lots of moving pieces to all of it. So ensuring that there's a roundtable discussion when it comes to making best decisions for the community and acting as a unified voice with that.
Great, thank you so much. Randall.
Hey, yeah, so there's a lot packed into this question, and again, I think it's going to come down to a balance of the appearance of the neighborhood versus what makes sense and what's fiscally responsible. Personally, I love the aesthetics of our neighborhood. I think it's part of the draw of the neighborhood. You know, friends or family, anyone who comes into the neighborhood is always in awe, especially on the valley side when they drive over there. Um, I agree. Ken-Caryl is one of the most desirable neighborhoods in Metro Denver, and the aesthetics is what makes that happen. Water usage, yeah, some green, but not everywhere is the note I took. I like the diversity of our landscape. I like that there's a little bit of everything there. I do think on the wildfire safety side that does have to take priority sometimes and drive decision making. And then common spaces, huge fan of. This is where the community gathers. This is where life happens. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Randall. Okay, question number 9. We're almost there, guys. We will be seeing an increasing number of Ken-Caryl Ranch households through new construction. What present-day Ken-Caryl priorities and activities do you see being impacted, and how would you address these changes? Carrie, we'll start with you.
Great, thank you. The reality is that all infrastructure and staffing will be impacted, including the utilization of trails, open spaces, pools, courts, parks, even our school-age children's programs. Parking is a current day issue that's only going to be taxed further as we introduce more households to our amenities. Additionally, there are increased risks to include the concern of vandalism, road safety for our families and wildlife, and really an overall impact on the natural beauty. I would address these changes by acknowledging that we're coming at them behind the 8 ball and create a strategic roadmap that continues to address the existing infrastructure, identifies the potential and inevitable risks, and then actually plans for expansion of amenities, services, and staffing needs moving forward. I think we should also take the time to welcome our new neighbors, be inclusive, introduce them to our community culture, as we have some pretty high expectations of each other around here. But all in all, I'm excited. I'm excited about the new neighbors and what subject matter expertise they can introduce for us.
Great, thank you so much. Philip.
So while we don't know how the changing demographics will affect the demand for our services, perhaps as the population ages, its use of existing facilities will decline, making worries about them being not enough space for all moot. Before expanding facilities, I think we should ensure that we're not asking our residents to fund projects which cost us all money to maintain and patrol, but which are used free of charge by non-residents. And before any money is allocated, we need to have a detailed justification why any new facility might be needed. A generic statement such as population is increasing by 20% just does not stand up to logical analysis. Specifically, again, our biggest, I believe, asset, the open space, but with regard to expanding trails, I would like to understand from everyone else how many miles of trails is enough, and specifically, why should non-residents be allowed to use our trails free of charge? If, as the realtors have suggested, proximity to trails raises our property values, we need to capitalize on that and say, if you want to ride on them, you should buy into the community who paid for them.
Great, thank you, Philip. Katie.
Yeah, thank you. Also understanding this is a lot of topics within this one question, a lot of stakeholders. For instance, like I'm thinking about the business center and more traffic and more people utilizing those businesses and how that impacts us all. I know it's out of our hands, for instance, but a couple people in sharing my running through for this role have said, oh, will you encourage a roundabout near Safeway and Tapando, and understanding that that's not necessarily in the jurisdiction or the topic of this conversation, but as more people move in, there are more issues. One thing that I observed throughout the pandemic is just down Coyote Song, if you will, or at the bottom, Green Mountain, how many more people were using trails. And as more people come into the community, I am aware that like I do like space on the trails. I really value solitude, and connecting with nature is important to me. So I am going to be aware that there's potentially going to be more trail users, and how do we shift as a community to that? Thank
Great,
you.
thank you so much. Randall.
Hey, yeah, so what's going to be impacted is going to be a lot of things. It's anything from parking, our open space, more residents using our services, more common space to maintain, more covenant and architectural controls to enforce, more staff at the MA to do that enforcement. It's just more impact across the board. I think we can take a good hard look at the exact number of residents as NADG has adjusted their density. See exactly how many people are coming in, do an assessment of what amount of those residents are going to be utilizing each of the amenities, and we can get a good picture of the impact and what that is. And I think this is something we need our best thought leaders working on today, and we need to get ahead of this. And then anything we do needs to be thoughtful, needs to be intentional, it needs to be fiscally responsible. It needs to be planned, and make sure that we can support these in a sustainable way. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, Rilla, you are up.
The increase of new construction households in Ken-Caryl is inevitable. These parcels has always been zone residential and have always been part of the master association and have been part of our metropolitan district. There is no way to really predict how they are going to or how our amenities are going to be able to handle them. When completed, they will have access to all of our amenities. But as shown in preliminary plans, there also may be some amenities that their new development have for their use only. And obviously we will see an increase in street traffic and in the commercial businesses like the grocery stores. But the biggest impact that I can see for Ken-Caryl is an increase may be necessary for the maintenance of funds for our current amenities. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Great. Okay, last question. If you are elected, what are the top 3 things you hope to accomplish as a board member? Philip, we will start with you.
Thank you. My favorite question. I want to ensure that all costs for any proposal are fully justified. I will never accept a single sheet of paper masquerading as a quotation for a $400,000 project without a detailed explanation of costs, procedures for change orders, specifications, and quality guarantees. I'll not approve spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on unnecessary replacement projects without a financial justification that the money to be saved will exceed the capital cost, and I will require 3 bids for a project, even if they are hard to come by. The second thing is that I will ensure the continuation of the fence replacement program. Benefits there are so significant, it's critical. And finally, I would like to create a conservation area to formally designate some of our undeveloped open space as free from any future disturbance in perpetuity. This has been proposed multiple times in the last 25 years and was last formally presented in the 2014 Cougar Trail Environmental Survey. So you've seen what I've accomplished in the last 3 years, and I will continue to act in everyone's best interest.
Great, thank you so much. Katie.
I go back to my application that's going to be in the paper and online. I'm running my campaign on the commitment to the community on these promises that I will ensure transparency within the board to our community members. I will represent all community members through listening and thoughtfulness, and I will dedicate myself to creating strong relationships and bonds to strengthen our community and collective community spirit. I love Ken-Caryl, and I really look forward to being part of the board if I'm elected.
Great. Thank you, Katie. All right, Randall, you're up.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'll say the last community survey, 96% of residents rated the community good or better. So we have really good momentum here. I don't think that there's radical changes to make right off the bat. The 3 things I'd like to instill, number 1 being transparency. Residents really need to demand thorough and timely MA communications, as well as insight into the decision-making processes. Second one is tease off of that is communication. We really need to look at some more frictionless ways for residents to give input. Sometimes it's hard to give up 3 hours on a Tuesday night just to speak for 3 minutes at a board meeting. Last thing would be focus. I think we've been seeing, and a lot of people have been frustrated by that recent board activities seem targeted to single issue and sometimes hidden agendas, and we have a lot of other things to deal with. Population growth with the new developments, fire mitigation issues, issues at the equestrian center. We got to start focusing on everything across the board.
Great, thank you, Randall. Rilla.
Number one is to make sure that the Master Association has a process to ensure that collected monies are used responsibly and to give the best value for the whole community. Ensure that the Master Association is transparent in its reporting process and use of funds to the community. Secondly, I want to preserve Ken-Caryl as it is today. The founders had a vision for a unique community, and we all chose to live here to be a part of that uniqueness. The MA should use the founding plans as a guide for its future. 3, Ken-Caryl is an awesome community and needs active participation to stay this way. I will continue to be respectful of everyone's right to express their opinions without fear of repercussion and encourage residents to contribute their voice. And I want to thank everyone for your attention, and I look forward to serving you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rilla. All right, Carrie.
So my top 3 priorities would be to create trust and transparency between the homeowners and the board through communication and collaboration, to then assess the budget and address contracts such as waste management, and then begin to plan for the taxation on our infrastructure that exists today and as new developments fold into the Ken-Caryl Ranch community. I want to thank you all for your time tonight. I want to thank the other candidates for very well proposed responses, and I look forward to any support.
Great, thank you. Thank you all so much. That concludes our questions for the evening. As mentioned, this will be posted online tomorrow, linked in the e-news and on social media as well. As you all are probably already aware, the election opened this morning. So we are active until 5 p.m. on March 5th. If you have any further questions, please visit the website or feel free to reach out to me directly. I am always here for you. So thank you again for everybody joining us, and thank you for the candidates for taking the time this evening. Have a great night, everybody.